Who do you think ends up in our prisons? Do we care who's in our prisons? Or does prison take care of that for us? Welcome to the world, baby Katie. A plucked pink puking bundle of smiles, sacrifices and sleepless nights. But Katie isn't a sleepy baby. I mean, everyone is tired. I mean, everyone's just drinking a bit just to take the edge off. Everyone's smoking a bit to take the edge off. Everyone is tired. Everyone is at the end of their tether. Theirs is an edgy house. Social services pop in. And Mum is tired. She is so bone tired and she's drinking a bit just to keep it calm, just to keep it together. And Katie is in a cot in a dirty nappy crying. And Mum is distracted. Not quite there. She's drinking and so very distracted. In fact, she's sectioned. So now it's Dad holding it together with 3 kids under 4. He's smoking a bit, he's dealing a bit. Katie turns 1. Mum comes back home, and Katie is in a cot crying in a nappy she soiled whilst her parents argue. Katie turns 2, and her parents are smoking just to get high, to get by, to get through this day. The arguments escalate. The children hear what Dad does to Mum. Katie turns 3 and is crying in a cot that she long outgrew. Hungry, nappy full, crying because no adult has looked at her all day. Katie and her siblings are removed and put under local authority care. Katie has a foster carer, separate from her siblings. She starts school. She moves foster carer, and again, and again, and again. Age 12, she helps out a bit with the kids next door. One night, their mum goes out, and their dad touches her all over and rapes her. He says, "That's babysitting, that is doing it properly." One night, he brings a friend. Money changes hands. And another, and another, and another. One night, there are 8 of them. Katie stops going to school and she runs away. She runs fast. She drinks to forget. She smokes to forget. Katie is 14 and in and out of care homes and terrified of her boyfriend and in deep with drugs. And days become weeks, become months, become score, smoke, sell, scrap, run harder, run faster, score, clip, police, score, give beat, gets beats, run, high, flying. The world is a beautiful place. Crash, run, score, crash, shivering in a crack den with rats for company, wishing that your mum, wherever the hell she is, was there to look after you, wondering what happened to that beautiful little girl in the picture. She was so sweet and kind, wondering how it came to this, wondering if killing the boyfriend might make it all go away, wondering, score. And then, on a great big sky high, you want the buzz to last. You see an easy target coming towards you. You grab her bag. She resists. In the mix of it all, the knife you pull jabs through her flesh. It's only her arm. She'll be all right. But you know the weight of a knife in flesh. And you run. You score. You clip. You score. The CCTV camera saw you. Katie's 18 now. She's had her community sentences. And this time, it's an adult jail. What next for Katie? What does justice look like for the old lady that Katie stabbed in the arm while stealing her handbag? What does justice look like for Katie? I want to ask you another question. How many people do you know who've been to prison? I mean, people in your social circle. I've worked in the justice system for about 7 years, encountering it from a position of privilege. I've zoomed in. I've done a lot of listening. And the people I work with are resilient, kind, wily, and honest. You know, they are brutally honest with me about how much I still have to learn. And I've zoomed out. Ask yourselves that question again. How many people do I know that have been to prison? And why is it for some of us the answer is lots, and for others the answer is no one? I start with Katie because our prisons are full of people like her. And even though you may never set foot in a prison, we can connect with Katie through her story. Who ends up in our prisons? other human beings. I want to share some stats with you about being behind bars. These are the kind of backgrounds of the people in our prisons. And we've heard quite a lot about mental health today, and over 70% of people in our prisons have 2 or more identifiable mental health problems. Stats like these ones and the stories behind them lead me to the suggestion made by Maureen Mansfield at Women in Prison that maybe it's the water, not the fish, that need changing. If Katie's water had been different, how different would her outcomes have been? Katie starts as a baby with nothing inherently criminal about her. She repeatedly suffers from a paucity of relationship. Now, relationships are central to our identity and to being human. If the journey into crime is relational, that is, if today's heroin use has its roots in the abusive parenting of yesteryear, then a significant part of the journey out is in reparative attachments and positive relationships. But can our justice system provide this? Are we willing to look at the person behind the criminal? Now, there is some amazing, amazing work going on in our prisons, but 2015 is, in general, a terrible time for them. We've had 5 years of savage cuts, and we are a long way from justice with stubbornly high reoffending rates. Frontline staff have been slashed. So you used to have about 1 prison officer for 3 people, you've now got 1 for 5. In the last year alone, suicide in prison rose by 69%. Overcrowding is endemic. HMP Leeds tops the list, and your local prison, HMP Exeter, it was built for 318 people. This week, there are 538 people in that prison. That is the current context, and in that, we are ideologically hurtling towards the American model of a prison industrial complex with 23-hour-a-day solitary confinement and private companies that warn investors that a more lenient penal policy may adversely affect their profits. We can't afford it. You know, it costs about an average of £37,000 a year to keep someone in prison. And the National Audit Office says that there is no consistent correlation between the number of people in prison and the level of crime. I'm reminded of Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, I looked at some of the common themes around lower reoffending rates and drew from my experience in the sector. Is there another way? Fortunately, there is, and there are some concrete examples. So, here are the 97% of people in prison who express a desire to stop reoffending. Then 58% is the actual reoffending rate for people doing a 12-month sentence or less. That is the reoffending rate in Norway, 20%. And it's 20% for a prison in England and Wales, HMP Grendon. Now, that is run as a therapeutic community with people on sentences longer than 2 years, and it has an excellent reputation. There's a 19% reoffending rate for the community mentoring organisation that I work for. It's a very simple model. We ask people what their goals and aims are, and we support them to meet those. Aims like having somewhere safe to sleep. So, what do the bottom 3 bars on my chart have in common? Relationship. Time and space for human beings to interact with others as human beings. The low reoffending rates in this bar chart are attributable, at least in part, to a relational approach to justice. Now, we need prisons, but the way we run them isn't inevitable. It's a choice. So here's my manifesto for relational justice. A person's acts may be abhorrent, but they are still a person of value and potential. I am what I am because of who we all are. This crime took place in our unequal, segregated society. We all mess up. You know, we all need forgiveness. We all need spaces where new behaviours and new relationships can be tried and can fail, ready to try again. In 10 years' time, this person may be an active citizen with a job, paying tax. I want you to ask yourselves the question, what is the worst thing you have ever done? And now imagine being known for that particular thing. We've got to use language carefully. We are all more complex than one defining noun. Labels inhibit the development of new narratives and new identities. Prison should not be an industry, nor the people in it a commodity. It is ineffective and all kinds of morally bankrupt. What would happen if those who sent people to prison were held more accountable for what happened in them? And finally, Wilkinson and Pickett's book, The Spirit Level, documents well that the bigger the wealth gap, the higher the crime rate. People simply don't get equal starts and opportunities in life. So here are my 8 principles for relational justice. But I wanted to demonstrate that this worked. What does this look like on the ground? And would any of these factors have made a difference for Katie? Determined to reduce the prison population. In 2007, in Texas, the money had run out. So unlikely as it seems, Democrats and Republicans worked together to curb the prison population. Drug rehabilitation and mental health care featured heavily. It's estimated since then they have saved $3 billion. And in the first year, the reoffending rate dropped by 10%. Use community sentences. So some people need to be in prison, but most people are in there for a non-violent crime. Community sentences save between £19,000 and £88,000 per person per year, and they're around 10% more effective than custodial sentences. Smaller prisons. Okay, you guys, you are in a prison of less than 400 people. You guys, you are in a prison of more than 800. So this is most of the prisons in London and all the new ones they're building now, more than 800 people. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Prisons says that you lot are 4 times more likely to be in a prison that does well. Sorry about that. This side. Smaller prisons work. Have high staff ratios. A Norwegian prison, Balstoy, has about 70 staff and 120 people. So that's about a 1-to-2 ratio compared to the 1-to-5 that we have here on average. Their reoffending rate is 16%. In the community project I work for, we work for around a year with about 8 women each, and our reoffending rate is 19%. Use restorative justice. Place human interaction at the heart, which means de-othering the victim and demonstering the person that committed the crime. This results in 27% fewer crimes committed by participants. And finally, there we are. Finally, train and pay officers properly. Okay, so in Norway, with their 20% reoffending rate, they train their officers for about 2 years. We train ours for 8 weeks. So this makes the acronym do shut. Now, I do think we should shut prisons, but only when we have plenty of those more effective, cheaper community alternatives in place. There's evidence that this approach is fruitful and that the public support it. YouGov did a 2012 poll and they said, how are we going to prevent crime? The top 3 answers were this: treatment for drug addiction, intense supervision of community orders, and mental health care. Imprisonment came fourth. We need to reimagine prison as a crucible for change. Places that mean fewer perpetrators, fewer victims, and fewer perpetrator victims. Wouldn't that be a fuller experience of justice for the old lady stabbed by Katie? This is an Elizabeth Fry or Wilberforce kind of size vision. Prisons as places of new life. I asked you at the beginning, do you know anyone that's been in prison? Do we care who's in there? And if we don't, just ponder again why that is. Then ponder where Katie is now. In a cot, crying. In a classroom, kicking off. In a car park, smoking crack. And then ask what you can do, human to human, before we find Katie with all her hopes, dreams, and talents in a prison cell. Take the long view, but start today. HMP Grendon costs about £10,000 per person per year more than a normal prison. But when you consider its 20% reoffending rate, less than half that national average, that very quickly becomes a saving. People caring about and connecting with the whole person. Relational justice. Seeking justice for the victims and the Katies, so that all victims have a significantly reduced likelihood of becoming a victim again. Thank you.